Do you spend hours practicing and wonder why you're not getting any better? 99% of drummers think they just need to practice long hours to improve, when really they need to fix a couple of small mistakes that make all the difference. So in this video, I'll show you what these mistakes are, why they're holding you back, and I'll show you how to avoid them so you can play faster and stronger right away. This mistake is unfortunately a very common one, and drummers that make it are limiting themselves and making it difficult to play faster or louder without getting injured. It causes a lot of physical injuries down the road. But once you fix it, not only will you play with more speed and precision, but you'll also be able to play more relaxed and with far greater endurance. The root cause of it all is hinges. No, I don't mean door hinges, I mean the literal hinges and joints of your body. I'm going to give you exercises throughout this video to help you, so let's start with exercise 1 and let me explain what I mean. Imagine trying to hammer a nail with a sledgehammer. You'd have immense power, but very little precision. Each swing would be slow, cumbersome, and dangerous if you miss. You might eventually get the nail in, but you'd waste a lot of energy, risk damaging the surrounding area, and probably end up exhausted. Now, think about using a regular old hammer instead. It's lighter, allowing for quicker, more controlled swings, and you can maintain accuracy without sacrificing too much power. You drive the nail in efficiently with less fatigue and risk of injury. But sometimes you're not hammering a nail at all and you need something else entirely. In drumming, it's crucial that you use the right tools for the job at hand. If you're using the wrong joints to move the sticks and play the drums, you'll feel very stiff and robotic and tense while you play. So first you need to be aware of the different hinges and joints available to you. From largest to smallest, you've got your shoulder, elbow, wrist, and then fingers. You can use all of them to move the stick, but without going into too much detail, avoid playing from only your elbows as much as you can help it. Use your wrists as a starting point in German or American grip, and involve the fingers for lighter, faster taps. You can involve the shoulder and elbow when you want more volume and power, but it has to come from this more fluid, relaxed whipping motion to avoid causing tension and further problems. Now this mistake I was making forever, and it wasted months of practice time. And it's a huge problem because I see countless drummers doing it when really they should be practicing a totally different way. And when you fix it, you're going to have so much confidence and control over your hands that it's not even funny. So let's get into it, starting with how I wasted months on the wrong methods. About 20 years ago, I was getting more serious about my drumming and starting to play and practice every day. I'd do my rudiments, I'd work on my technique, I'd practice my single strokes, but I wasn't really getting better fast. I'd perform with some bands and I was always nervous because I wasn't confident I could nail the fills and not have my sticks flailing about. The mistake I made was that I couldn't actually control my hands and sticks properly. There was always some variance in how I played a fill or moved around the kit or did any little variation and couldn't keep the timing clean. So don't do what I did and practice all your technique and speed stuff without focusing on this first. Control. Before you can get fast, you need more control over each hand. So I'm going to show you the next exercise 2 different ways, and you let me know in the comments which one looks more in control to you. What'd you notice? The first technique is fine, but there's something subtle in it that wrecks your ability to play consistently. Now with the second technique, you can see that each and every stroke starts and ends in the same place. That means if you move the stick towards the drum in the same way at the same speed each time, you'll get consistent strokes and be in total control of your sound. So what's wrong with technique 1 and how do you actually practice technique 2? Well, the problem is the lack of any reference point for your stick. When you prepare to strike the drum, like this, you can never be too sure that you've lifted the sticks up to the same height for each repeated stroke. Maybe it's half an inch lower the second stroke, maybe an eighth of an inch higher after that. Not only does that mean your dynamics won't be even, but it also means that the distance the stick has to travel to produce a note is also constantly changing. It's all too easy for that to translate into wobbly timing. So what's the solution? I call it the stick leveling technique, and it's simply to practice placing your other stick close behind the one you're practicing with. Start at exactly this height and move the stick down only. When the stick rebounds back up, your goal should be to stop the stick at exactly the same spot it started. The other stick, you simply keep still as your reference point so you know if you stop the stick a little too short of its starting position, or if you've gone too far, like this. As you make adjustments using this new frame of reference, you're going to feel a new level of control over your sticks you've never felt before. And while you're fixing this one, you also need to watch out for this next mistake. I see drummers doing this and it makes me sad. They're losing control and having to regain control with every single note. It leads to a sloppy sound and wonky timing, and it's happening so quickly they don't even notice. Sounds like something you'd want to fix, right? To fix it, I want you to imagine that your sticks are bouncy balls. Now, I think it's safe to say we're all mostly pretty good at bouncing a ball and catching it while having fun while you bounce it everywhere, right? So drums are similar, but there's a catch. We should be able to get the same sound and volume out of your drums and cymbals every single time. So that means placement matters. If the ball bounces here, and then it bounces here, and then over here, well, it's going to sound 3 different ways, right? So how do you solve it? You throw the ball down at the same spot every time, yes. But what else? You throw it down at the same velocity with the same pathway every time, which means your starting position should always be the same, and ideally, your ending position too. If you bounce the ball down here and it ends at this spot, you've got to move it all the way back if you want the same sound a second time. It's terribly inefficient, so what's a better way to hit the mark consistently? The answer is to throw the ball straight down without any diagonal angle. If you do that, the ball will bounce straight back up to its original position for you to catch. But if there's even a slight angle in the path the ball takes, it's going to bounce away somewhere besides its starting position, and that's what you want to avoid. When you're playing the drums, avoid repeated strokes on one drum diagonally. Pay attention to the path the stick takes and practice moving it in a straight line down, so it rebounds off the drum straight back up to where it started. You won't be fighting the stick's inclination to bounce the other way, and you'll spend way less effort playing the drums while sounding better in the process. You feel like you're always playing the same handful of fills, so you seek out some new songs, you learn them, and then you feel stuck again playing the same slightly larger handful of fills. What's up with that? It can be really embarrassing too, and I know that firsthand because one time back in my high school jazz band, we were performing at a big theater and I knew I was going to take a solo after the others. So I practiced that solo. I worked out some really cool triplet fills and licks. It all fit the tempo and sounded great to me. Then it comes time for the concert and we're on stage playing and it goes something like this. It was not my greatest moment, but it was a great learning experience, and I'm going to give you the solution to this problem that will give you so many ideas and so much freedom on the drums that you won't know what to do with it all. But the first problem all comes down to how you learn a new language. Learning a language is hard, right? It takes years of study and you still visit a country. All you can do is say a couple of pre-rehearsed phrases and questions and you feel like a total noob. You get so attached to these sentences and then you feel like you can hardly communicate at all, right? If all you can do is say back what you rehearsed, it's impossible to improvise and be creative. So in drumming, it's the same, right? The more you pre-rehearse a bunch of fills and licks, the more likely you're going to say them correctly, but say them at inappropriate times, like my high school jazz band solo. I'll never let that one down. So here's the thing. Learning new fills literally could be holding you back. It sounds crazy, but there's a better way, and it's this. Learn the building blocks of the language you're learning, not just the sentences themselves. I'm talking syllables and words and grammar. In rhythmic terms, we're talking about this, which I call the rhythmic checklist. This checklist is all the possible notes and rests within a group of 3 notes. In other words, it's all the possible rhythms you can play with these 3 spaces available to you. The possibilities are endless here, so I'm just going to get you started with this simple interpretation. Take all these outline rhythms and turn them into accents. Take single strokes and learn to play each accent pattern one at a time. Getting them all correct is like solving a puzzle, and it's really satisfying once you start to get it. Then just start mixing and matching different rhythms to get longer phrases like this. After that, start moving those accents around the kit. Try your toms, play your cymbals with and without the kick drum, and just see what you can come up with. Finally, I want you to start to hear and sing the rhythms that you're playing. Have your voice be the generator of new rhythms, and you'll literally be playing what you hear in your head. I've got even more tips for you on this in a minute, but first, do you feel like everything you play is just a little bit sloppy? Are you trying to play that tune in band practice and it keeps falling apart? It's usually because of this one thing, and we're gonna solve it together. And once you do, you're gonna feel 10 times more confident playing the parts you're already playing, and it's going to feel 10 times easier to play them. This is literally the method I give my students that gets them incredible results and confidence on the drums that they've never had before. So let's break it down. Now, I want you to imagine that your drumming is like a video game. You're on level 2 and you're trying to get faster and beat the boss that's stopping you and get to the next level, right? Let's say the level is all about paradiddle diddles. You start practicing them, you move the accents around the pattern, you start orchestrating it around the kit, you turn it into a beat, and you begin playing them faster and faster. And then you get to the final paradiddle boss. 120 BPM, 16th note, triplet paradiddle diddles. You try to play them. You fail. You try again, you fail. You try again, and you get so close, but you mess up a little. So you go back to the beginning of the level, you practice your paradiddle diddles a little bit more, and on the 4th time round, you beat the boss. You've successfully played those paradiddle diddles at 120 BPM and beaten the level. So what do you do now? You move on and you beat the next boss, paradiddle diddles at 150 BPM. It makes sense, right? Most drummers approach learning the instrument this way, but the truth is, it's literally what's holding them back. We so often think that once we can do the thing, we've passed the level, we've made progress, and it's time to move forward. And here's why that's a mistake. If you make 5 attempts at beating a drumming level, let's say nailing a specific part of a song, and you've succeeded once, have you really mastered it? Or have you gotten kinda sorta good at it, but really you failed the level 4 times and maybe got a little lucky on attempt 5? If you want mastery over the drums, if you want complete control over your limbs to express whatever you want when you want it, you can't leave it up to chance. You need to know that you've mastered that level. So how do you know when you've mastered? So how do you know when you've mastered it? Here's the thing. You haven't mastered the level when you've beaten it once or twice or 5 times. You've mastered the level when you can no longer even make a mistake. You've done that level so many times, so carefully, making sure every little thing is perfect, and that repetition is encoding every little perfect movement into your muscle memory, so you can play it perfectly on autopilot. And yes, you need to make sure you don't have any poor technique habits happening at the same time, because you'll be programming your current technique to run on autopilot too, for better or worse. That's the real secret to getting great at whatever you want on the drums. Spend more time on one thing, pay more attention to getting it right, and don't move on. Literally keep doing it just like that without speeding up over and over again, and you will master it. This one mistake might cause more problems for drummers than any other thing. Drummers making it often come to me complaining that their hands feel like they're gonna fall off after playing for just 10 minutes. This mistake will make your legs feel like they're burning after just a few attempts of a faster kick pattern. Or worst of all, it can make your timing sloppy no matter how hard you try to fix it. I'm gonna show you exactly how this mistake shows up so you know what to look out for, and then we'll add it all up and I'll show you why it holds drummers back and how to fix it. Our first example is this, and it's commonly called burying the beater. It's a natural thing to do. Play hard into the drum and get a strong kick, right? But if you change your perspective and instead play off of the drum, you're going to get a more full bass drum sound. Yes, a lot of people will say it doesn't make a difference if you have pillows in your kick, but I've been producing and mixing records for 20 years, so trust me, it makes a big difference in the sound. But also the benefits go beyond just improving your sound, and I'm getting to that, but first, our second example is this. And I mention it in almost every video because it's the most important thing you can do to prevent injury and carpal tunnel long term. But this mistake can happen without you even realizing, and that's why it's important to get all these technique details in place so you don't have to think about it, which brings us to our third example, which causes a lot of other problems for drummers, but I'll get to that in a moment. But this mistake happens when your back fingers come off of the stick, and tell me if you can see why. The ironic thing is that for some of us, when we try to play looser, we actually end up in a worse spot. Because if you're too loose with your back fingers, if they're not even on the stick, as you can see, it gets pretty wiggly back there. And what happens at that point, without even thinking about it, you start tightening up on the fulcrum. You're trying to get back control, but with the wrong digits. So once you gently get your fingers back around the stick in contact with it at all times, you'll stop tensing up and you can loosen up the fulcrum. And the drums themselves will just sound better. But if you really want to sound better on the drums, is it just about how they sound? Or is it also about what you play? Like I mentioned earlier, if you feel like you're still always playing the same patterns and fills and stickings and grooves over and over and over and over again, well, I've got another solution for you to break out of it. When students come to me, they're often in this sort of rut and they're bouncing from song to song, trying to get new grooves and fills into their vocabulary. But this is actually like learning the literature without learning the language of drumming. Because what do you do with a blank page? How do you go off script? You don't want to be a monkey at a typewriter trying to write a paradiddle masterpiece from nothing. I have no idea where that analogy came from. This is exactly what happens when you learn one fill, then another, then another, then another. I want you to try something totally and completely different. I want you to go as deep as you can on your most boring fill. What does that mean? Well, take a pattern that you're sick of, you've played it to death, and you don't know what else to do with it. and we're going to reduce it down to its foundation. And that means just the sticking. I'm going to use an example from my book, and I devoted an entire chapter to this one sticking. So you're going to take your sticking and put it through enough filters that a million doors open up for you with just a few patterns that you feel comfortable with. I'd rather you be truly comfortable and expressive with 3 patterns than have 15 patterns that you can do, but only one thing with each of them. The first filter is dynamic phrasing. Get comfortable moving the accents to different parts of the sticking that you're playing. Next, orchestration. So move your hands to different voices on the kit. After that, something I call internal orchestration. In this example, my right hand within the pattern is first playing on the hi-hat and then occasionally moving to the snare drum before moving back. Then we have internal articulation. So not every note, but some of the notes of the pattern change the articulation. Add some buzz strokes, play some shallow rim shots, play in the rim, whatever you want to do to explore actually changing the sounds you use on those drums and cymbals. Finally, something I like to call internal rudiments. That means take the core of your sticking and spice it up. So a lot of times, if I'm playing a pattern that has right, right, left, I'm going to add a flam to that first right. It becomes a little Swiss Army triplet internally within the larger sticking. Another great thing to do is take single notes and double them up like this. But there's another mistake that could be holding you back even as you go through these paces. So if you find yourself exploring these ideas and they're not getting you anywhere, this might be the problem. A lot of drummers ask me why they can't get a specific fill right, or they can't fix this little problem with their grip or their open-close technique or their back fingers or what have you. And almost without fail, it comes down to this core concept: awareness. If you aren't aware of every little thing you're doing and what your sticks are doing, you even have a chance to fix it. So stop playing that pattern I just had you play a minute ago at 16th notes at 130 BPM. Slow it way down to whole notes at 50. Slow it down even more than that. I want you to imagine that you're doing drumming Tai Chi and watch every little thing that your hands are doing. Watch what your fingers are doing. Watch how the stick reacts to you and the drums and the rebound and the air around it. If you actually play that slowly, if you actually spend 20 minutes perfecting the motions at Tai Chi speed, you'll be ahead of 99% of drummers. Because 99% of drummers spend 20 years skipping these 20 minutes. But these 20 minutes make more of a difference than anything else. And now that you know how to fix these critical mistakes, you're off to a great start, but it's not gonna be enough if you wanna truly level up your drumming. You need these game-changing exercises to get there, so watch this video where I'll show you exactly which exercises you need to get better fast.